Good day, America. Today, the Patriot wants to talk to you about the Constitution. Again, might sound a little dry and boring, but you know what? Lots of people claim, I have a right to this, I have a right to that, I have a constitutional right. They don't know what their rights are. Unfortunately, most people in America are ignorant when it comes to such important stuff. So, I have in front of me a copy of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I'm going to give you a little summary of exactly what your rights are, just so you know. Now, the Constitution itself is one document. Then you have the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to it that were put together right after the fact, and we've added on to that. There's a total of 27 amendments to the Constitution right now. And there is a procedure, if we want to change something, if enough of the country seriously wants to change it, to add more amendments. And we've done so. So, in a nutshell, the Constitution itself is a document that says, here's how the government should work. Here's the structure, here's the different branches, here's what they can do, here's what they can't do, here's how they should be organized, here's how people should be elected to them, blah, blah, blah. So, in itself, the Constitution only itemizes one right for individual people, and that's in Section 4. And it says the right to a Republican form of government to protect us against invasion and against domestic violence. We have the right to have a government to protect us from violence, foreign and domestic. That's the only right we have in the Constitution itself. That's why we had to have the Bill of Rights, because Founding Fathers did, give them credit, sit back and say, you know what, this is great, but it doesn't go far enough. We need to itemize down to the individual level. So let's put a few more things together. So I'm going to tell you exactly what the first 10 amendments, their Bill of Rights, said to us, and which ones we added after that. And anything you don't hear, guess what? You do not have a constitutional right to. Okay? So here goes. Amendment 1. Free expression of religion. Okay? Free exercise and expression of religion. That's the first thing they said. This was a Christian Judeo-based government and country, no matter what anybody in office currently says. So the first thing they gave us was the free expression of religion. That's good. Freedom of speech. Yes, very good. Again, as long as it doesn't violate the overriding rule of protecting people from violence, like shouting fire in a music theater creates a riot, creates violence. So these rights go as far as they don't override the overriding right of protecting us. Okay? So that there's no absolutes, you have to put it in terms of that. Freedom of the press. As much as we still have a press. The propaganda press doesn't really give news anymore, but if we ever get another press. The right to peaceable assembly. Peaceable assembly. Not the kind of stuff we're seeing on the left here. Petition of the government for a redress of grievances. You have the right to petition the government. You have the right to say, hey government, this is what we want. Listen to us. Try to do what we're saying because we elected you. That's our right. That's all in Amendment 1. That was a good amendment. Okay? Amendment number 2. In a nutshell, the right to keep and bear arms. Not this gun but not that gun, not this weapon but not that weapon, not, magazines that have X number of bullets in it. The right to keep and bear arms. Period. You know what that could be? That could be picking up a rock and throwing it at you. That could be a crossbow. That could be Poseidon's tripod. That could be anything. It could be a friggin' Sherman tank. It says the right to bear arms. No restrictions. That's clear. Okay? Enough with that one. Amendment 3. No quartering of soldiers in your home without your consent. Quartering means putting them up. If there's a war, when the Civil War was going on, people would take over someone's house and say, you know what? We need a place to house and feed and rest our soldiers, so we're taking your house. Not allowed to do that. Not really applicable anymore, so I'm not too worried about that one. Okay, Amendment 4. The right to be secure in your person, house, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizure without a warrant, which requires probable cause and particularly describes the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. What does that mean? That means the government cannot just barge in and take whatever they want. You have a right to be protected from unfair search and seizure. They have to get a warrant for any kind of violation of privacy, for phones, for emails, for home, they can't put a listening device up and record your conversations in your house unless they have a warrant that specifically says here's what we're looking for. And warrants are not open-ended. It says they have to say exactly, here's why we need it, and here's what we're looking for. So it's very specific. It's been twisted all over the place. That's what you have a right to. Okay, Amendment 5. This is more court stuff. No double jeopardy. That's fair. If you tried once, guilty or innocent, you're done. Okay? Can't do it again. No compelling you to witness against yourself. When people claim the Fifth, that's what they're talking about. You can't incriminate yourself. You can't be forced to testify against yourself. That's fine. No deprivation of life, liberty, or property without due process. You can't just be hauled off like they're starting to do with national security, homeland security type issues. You're a terrorist, boom. You shouted it too loudly at someone, that's terroristic speech. You can be taken away. We're getting to that point, people. We have a right to be protected against that. No seizure of private property for public use without just compensation. Just is a subjective word. It should be market value, period. They didn't have terms like that back then. That's what they meant. That word has been twisted around and the government has ripped people off bad. Okay, we're up to Amendment 6. A speedy and public trial by an impartial jury in the district where the crime was committed. Pretty self-explanatory. Notification of the nature and cause of the accusation for your crime. You can't just be hauled off. You're going to be told why you're being arrested. Pretty clear. Ability to face the witnesses against you. This one is broken all the time. You or your legal representative has the right to face exactly who's accusing you, what they're saying about you. It often doesn't happen. That's wrong. A compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in your favor, meaning you can subpoena people. If somebody knows the truth and can free you, but they don't want to talk, you can subpoena them, drag them into court, and force them to tell the courts what the truth is. You have a right to that. The assistance of counsel for your defense. If you can't afford one will be provided, blah, blah, blah. We've all heard that in crime shows a million times. Okay, Amendment 7. A trial by jury where the value in controversy exceeds $20. Now, in the last couple of centuries, we've had something called inflation. Okay? The $20 limit's a little higher now. But by the Constitution, it says if the crime is worth more than $20, you have a right to a trial by a jury. That's not really followed anymore, but that's what the Constitution says. Amendment 8, again, on judicial. No excessive bail, no excessive fines, no cruel and unusual punishment. Kind of self-explanatory. Amendment 9, the right in the Constitution is to not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Sounds a little wordy. Basically, they can't create something in the Constitution to overstep what you have a right to on an individual level, which is good. Amendment 10, any powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states or the people. So if a power was not given to the federal government, the states can say that's our power, or the people. That part's always left off, or the people, but that's the way it works. Amendment 11, federal judicial power does not extend to matters of states or foreign states. That means the federal government can't make a law binding a state to something at a state level, and they can't make a law for another country. Only within our bounds and only things that apply to the country as a whole. That's a good amendment. Actually, that's the first one that goes beyond what the Founding Fathers did. This is 11. So the first 10 is what the Founding Fathers, right after the fact, said, you know what, we need to tack these things on. So the original Constitution and its amendments went to there. Now to go further, Amendment 12, qualifications for President and Vice President, not really important individuals. 13, slavery and involuntary servitude are illegal except as a punishment for a crime. That's a little tricky. Most people don't know that. Involuntary servitude means you go to jail. That's simple, okay? But technically it says, as punishment for a crime, you can be made a slave. That's the way it was done a few centuries ago by us and lots of other countries. And by the time Amendment 13 came around, they still didn't word it enough to really protect against that. Amendment 14, anyone born or naturalized in the U.S. is a citizen and has the right to due process of law and equal protection of the laws. Citizens have that right, okay? Born or naturalized as a citizen. That one's big, that's important, remember that one. Amendment 15, every citizen can vote regardless of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Citizens can vote. Non-citizens do not have that right. Very clear, Amendment 15, remember that one. Amendment 16, clarification of Congress's right to lay and collect taxes. Oh, we love that, but doesn't really say anything about our individual rights. 17, clarification of election of senators. Okay. 18, abolition of liquor. This is where we made a whoops, okay? Back in the day, we said, you know what, liquor's no good, we're going to outlaw that. And enough people got in control, they outlawed it. We'll come back to that one. Okay, you all know how that one turned out. 19. Every citizen can vote regardless of sex. Now you'd think 15 covered that by saying every citizen can vote, but I guess they needed to be a little more specific and said, okay, women too. That's fine. 20. Clarification of presidential and congressional terms. 21. Here's where they went back to 18 and said, you know what? Repeal abolition of liquor. Okay? Let's get rid of 18 because it didn't work, wasn't right. I give them credit for that. And here's where the process shows we can come back and we can say, you know what? We made a mistake, okay? We're correcting it. That's a good thing. This process works, and that's proof of it. So if we really do an oops and people say, oh my God, what the hell do we do? We have a method to fix things, and there's an example. 22, clarification of presidential term limits. I wish that went to Congress as well at the time, but it didn't. Okay, that's a whole nother video. We'll get into that. Clarification 23, Amendment 23, clarification of presidential vote in D.C. Doesn't concern us here. 24, no poll tax on voting. That is where people were really had a war on people being able to vote by saying at the polls you have to pay a tax or you can't vote. That was discriminatory. That was bad. We fixed it. 25, presidential disability and succession. 26, you can only vote if you're 18 or older. 27, clarification of congressional pay. Now, if you say, I have a right to something, did you hear it there? If you didn't, you don't have that right. These are the rights the Constitution gives us. These and only these. There is a process in the Constitution to put amendments through, but it's not based on the whim of a few. It's not based on the current people in control. It has to be the majority of states. It has to be a ton of people. It has to be a real overwhelming need and desire to have something fundamentally change in our Constitution. Otherwise, no, it stands as is. And guess what? The President and the Congress and all heads of government are sworn to uphold and defend this document, Mr. Obama. Just saying that because he's trying to shred the crap out of it, so I have an issue there. But you are sworn to uphold and protect this. And if you want to change it through the process given to us. You don't just override it. You don't just go around the backs of the powers that be and say, screw it, see if you can stop me. That's a whole nother video too. I'm not going to get into that. But what I will say is there's another Congress and congressional, or actually constitutional amendment that's been making the rounds. It's been gaining a lot of support. It's wordy. In a nutshell, it says, government, President, Congress, everybody in government and their staffs shall be subject to all of the laws they make for the people. Simple. There's a lot of words to it when you put it in technical terms, but that's what it means. Government, you are not above the law. You are equal to it, the same as we are. You are subject to it, the same as we are. And what laws you make, you should have to live by. Maybe that'll make you think twice about making them. All these waivers you get for all this kind of crap, you make a law you know is terrible, so you give your friends waivers so they'll vote for it because they know it's terrible, and if they were subject to it, they'd never vote for it. The waivers, there's got to be a real reformation around that whole process. And I would love to see that amendment that's been making the rounds, and might actually happen at some time, go into play, that says, you know what, government, you are subject to the laws you make, just the way we are. Who can argue with that? Okay? Hopefully that'll be number 28. And with that, that's my take on your rights. Remember, if you didn't hear it here, you do not have that right. If you did hear it here, I will fight for it alongside you because our rights are important. And that's the lesson of the day.